listen, I'm from Jersey City, New Jersey, born and raised. So street fighting is one of my things. So, I came up doing that. I train because I like it. I'm not one of those guys, and I discourage any of the viewers. If you train, don't train so you can fight someone in the street. It can get you in a lot of trouble. Believe it or not, it can get you injured, because if you're in a real street fight with a person that's not civil, that person might not stop there. He might be like, oh, because there's some people who are trained or taught, if I can't beat you, what's the movie? One of my favorite movies, Casino. So remember they're talking about Joe Pesci's character. He said, yeah, if you beat him with the hands, he's going to come with a bat. If you beat him with a bat, he's going to come with a knife. If you beat him with a knife, he's going to come with a gun. And if you beat him with a gun, you better kill him, because he's going to keep coming back. So for you people who are not familiar with something, that type of mentality, keep that in mind. Clinching, period, contrary to what a lot of people are going to say, is the most underrated aspect of fighting. Most people will say there are 3 aspects to fighting, period. I'm not even talking about MMA, I'm talking about fighting. A fair fist fight minus like groin strikes and eye pokes and, fish hooks and things of that nature. They'll say there's the striking aspect, there's the wrestling aspect, and then there's the ground. I just like to say submission wrestling, because some people have different styles. Not everybody does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. If I take an elbow, right? Some people think I need to wing an elbow. I can just do an elbow like that, and if I catch you with the actual bone, like I'm supposed to, I can cut you. The equivalent to using a knife or a razor, and I can split you open. If you have 2 untrained people, right, and they start fighting, immediately there's going to be what some people call in the street, quote unquote, tasseling. It's really clinching. Let me see if I can get this guy on the ground. Now, some people look at that as wrestling, but if I can't wrestle you, if I can't shoot on you and take you down, right, that's not wrestling. That's
all right, guys, welcome back to another Grow to Fighting Secrets Tactical Podcast. Today is going to be Tactical Podcast number 42. We're coming at you today with Charles Twum-Baa. Now, Charles and I know each other. We trained at the same gym, AMA Fight Club in Jersey. And Charles and I have kind of been buddies back and forth in the dojo, outside of the dojo a little bit, for at least 3 years now. And Charles, I met you when I was brand new white belt, and we trained together a little bit. You're an intimidating figure to go against when it comes to rolling, because you've got, this long resume. You're a Muay Thai striking instructor, assistant instructor at the club. I know you actually train professional fighters now as well, and you have a very impressive resume, man. I was going to ask you for more of a resume before we got started, but I figured I'd let you actually kind of give us your intro. How did you get started in martial arts? Where are you now? And where do you want to go?
all right. So I'll try to make it as brief, because I can get long-winded sometimes. But I started training. I started at AMA maybe like 10 years ago, just about. And, so just real quick background. I never did anything really athletic. I wrestled for a bit in high school, but I was never very good. I've never been athletic. Maybe we'll go into those stories a little later. But I got in. I said, hey, man, I want a black belt in jiu-jitsu. They were, a friend of mine said, hey, man, your striking is terrible. So I was like, let me pick up Muay Thai while I'm there. And I just had a talent for it. AMA has been known to have very good instructors. I got to benefit from those guys that were there. And I just, what's the word I want to say? I kind of just dove in and immersed myself into it. And I started progressing rapidly. If everybody's actually seen me, I'm not the mesomorph, the one that doesn't really. I am not that. I am pleasantly plump, and but I was able to put it together. And I'm a fairly intelligent person, so it just happened to click, and I started doing jiu-jitsu. Even though I started to come to do jiu-jitsu, I kind of got better at the striking quicker than I anticipated, and I just dedicated myself to getting better at jiu-jitsu. So right now I have a brown belt in jiu-jitsu and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and I trained under Gunsuk for Muay Thai, who's legendary Muay Thai champion, for those that don't know. And, I've progressed pretty well there. So.
Yeah, I remember coming in and signing up for the Muay Thai aspect of it, and you were teaching the classes, going back and forth. You are actually big on clinching, and you do a lot more with clinching than some of the other guys I've seen. Do you think that that's really an important aspect of striking in general, is that whole clinching range?
It's funny. Let me put it like this. I teach a lot of classes, as you know. I kind of keep a lot of things close to the vest. So this is probably going to be the first time, Will, that I'm going to share a lot of things that go in my mind, concepts when it comes to fighting. Clinching, period, contrary to what a lot of people are going to say, is the most underrated aspect of fighting. Most people will say there are 3 aspects to fighting, period. I'm not even talking about MMA. I'm talking about fighting. A fair fist fight minus like groin strikes and eye pokes and, fish hooks and things of that nature. They'll say there's the striking aspect, there's the wrestling aspect, and then there's the ground. I just like to say submission wrestling, because some people have different styles. Not everybody does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I just make it general. And very rarely, and I always say, if you hear a person say those 3 and they don't say that there are 4 aspects and say clinching, I kind of like, your brain should start turning. It can't be neglected. It's very underrated. Clinching is super important, because if you have 2 untrained people, right, and they start fighting, immediately there's going to be what some people call in the street, quote unquote, tasseling. It's really clinching. Let me see if I can get this guy on the ground. Now, some people look at that as wrestling, but if I can't wrestle you, if I can't shoot on you and take you down, right, that's not wrestling. Now, some people will see wrestling because there's a wrestling clinch, right? There is just to make it general, there's a Thai clinch. There's still clinches. It's grappling based, period. Whether it's wrestling or it's Thai, it's in between. Now, the wrestling is because I intend to bring you to the ground, but the clinching is because there's 2 sides to the clinching. There's a defensive clinch and there's an offensive clinch. So, yeah, I like the clinch because you have to be prepared to clinch with someone. And the energy system it takes to proficiently clinch is much different than it is to strike, and it's much different than it is to be on the ground grappling.
It also takes different muscle groups to properly clinch with someone. I mean, I know you and Gonsak are always about, stand up tall and straight when they try to grab the back of your neck. And that really takes a lot of lat muscles, a lot of lower back muscles as well. And if you're not training for something like that regularly, whether it's weights or simply just doing the Muay Thai or whatever, it's going to be a lot more difficult, I think, than people seem to think it might be.
And conditioning for the muscle. I don't know anatomy, so I'm not even going to pretend like I do. But just conditioning for your neck as well. So when you do like your first 2 clinching classes, when you get home at the end of the night, you're like, God, my neck, because somebody's repeatedly yanking down, right? So it takes the muscles in your lower back, your shoulders, and then your actual neck and the back of your head. And you have to be intricate there, because in that clinch, depending on what side of the coin you're on in the clinch, you have to master your breathing system to conserve and expend energy, right? And then decide, depending on your style of fighting, if you're going to continue to clinch, if you're going to be, so if you take like an Anderson Silva, it's just for the younger viewers, they might not remember this is a classic fight. It changed the 185 division in MMA for a long time. Anderson Silva versus Rich Franklin, who was the perennial champ at 185. He dethroned Evan Tanner, and he fought Anderson. You look at Anderson's physique, and you're like, oh, he can't be much skinny guy. You look at Rich Franklin's physique, very imposing, muscles, cuts. And you saw Rich Franklin get destroyed in the clinch. And even in the rematch, it was very similar. But because those were different muscle groups you had to recruit. So, I mean, at least aesthetically, from the eye test, we would probably say that Rich Franklin was stronger than Anderson, but not in that position. So I like to tell people, and I mean, I don't mind saying it because unless you train with me, you're not going to get my concepts and fully understand it. Everything is about positions. So even in the clincher in a certain position, right, either an offensive position or the defensive position, it takes certain muscles to execute efficiently. Because I can knee you, but it might not hurt.
Right.
I need to put myself in position to knee and elbow you and actually injure you or damage you.
That's a big thing when it comes to specifically street fighting and self-defense is injuries versus, just striking at somebody. When I first got into Muay Thai, I thought it's a sport, whatever. I know Krav Maga, whatever. But I quickly found no, this is some serious stuff here. They can injure you and do it quickly and well. When it comes to self-defense, street fighting and stuff, I mean, I just explained the obvious, but how applicable really is Muay Thai for defending ourselves in a violent altercation?
Muay Thai is probably the most complete striking martial art. It's the most complete one because you use pretty much all of your body parts, and there's a grappling aspect to it. Now, the grappling aspect of it is not totally complete, but overall we're talking about. So if you watch, and I always say watch two untrained fighters, and a lot of people, I don't want to say people, but in the past, a lot of people, all the martial arts that anybody does, pick one, is developed, or let me say it the right way. If it is an efficient martial art, and I think so, I don't downplay any martial art, karate, taekwondo, kung fu, they're developed off of watching people in combat and developing counters and efficient movements for that. So that now I'm trained, and but if I'm going against the untrained person, that person will be swimming underwater and not know how to swim, basically. So to answer your question, Muay Thai is the most complete striking art. Now, somebody might say Wing Chun, scratch that, Jeet Kune Do, because it's supposed to encompass everything. But I'm basing it off of efficiency, because if I take an elbow, right, some people think I need to wing an elbow. I can just do an elbow like that, and if I catch you with the actual bone like I'm supposed to, I can cut you. The equivalent to using a knife or a razor, and I can split you open, and without expending a lot of energy. That is efficiency. So to reiterate, Muay Thai is the most complete striking martial art. So in the street, you get a guy, and a lot of times what happens is I'm fighting you, and I'm beating you in the striking portion with distance and range. So you realize you don't have an answer for that. So you immediately clinch me or attempt to take me down. Muay Thai has defenses in there to keep us both standing, and for me to attack you and, again, either injure you or damage you.
Now, for our viewers out there who aren't really familiar with Muay Thai, and this is what Charles was talking about, a lot of sweeps and a lot of clenching. So, Charles, you were saying it's got the ability to keep both parties standing, which I think is such a key here with guys out there right now. You got so many guys who wrestled. You got so many guys who are doing BJJ. They decide, I'm just going to shoot in and take the guy down. But if you know something like Muay Thai and you've got an answer for that already, no, you're not, buddy. I'm going to keep you standing. That's a lethal weapon right there.
And so I like Michael Bisping. I think that he was one of the most complete, not the best, but one of the most complete strikers for MMA. And when I say it, a lot of people kind of look at me like I'm crazy. And I say, well, you can't, not that he completely used Muay Thai, but he used kickboxing. I need to be able to use my Muay Thai or kickboxing. It is virtually impossible for me to do that if I am on my back or on my knees. So I have to be able to keep it up and keep the fight standing up. And I've sparred with wrestlers, good wrestlers, and the knees. And because, like I said, you use pretty much your entire body to do so. Elbows, punches, knees, kicks. In some regards, if you're doing Muay Baran or some other arts, you can headbutt or come down with the elbows very viciously and really damage a person. And so you think you're going to take me down or hold me and restrain me, but you might have another thing coming. You might have made matters worse than improved your position.
And that's what I was about to bring up and ask you. It's the Muay Baran, and there's like a couple of different Muay things out there. But guys will say like, oh, well, Muay Thai, it doesn't have the dirty fighting secrets. I can't, get him in the groin or headbutt him. But
untrue. We're talking about street fighting. So all it is just so I was explaining to somebody the other day, maybe even today, I don't know. And I was talking to a certain individual, and we were going to spar. And it was going to be a full MMA spar. And at that time, I only was doing either Muay Thai or Jiu-Jitsu, and I hadn't meshed them together just yet. So he was like, yeah, I'll just shoot on you and take you down. I said, I am very precise with these knees. I am going to knee you. Believe me, I know I can time it. And not only can I time it, which is another aspect of fighting, is your accuracy. I can place it. I know where I want to put it. I'm not going to accidentally knee you in the face when we spar. I can put it in your chest. I can put it in your pecs. I can put it in your belly button, wherever I want to place my strike. I know how to do that. And now when you're dealing with knees, and it's funny because I say, I think Muay Thai is a very good counter for wrestling if you know how to make it, how to adapt it. If you know how to make the adaptations and the modifications, you can really give a guy a hard time. Why? The wrestler wants to clinch, but when he clinches, he's clinching crouched.
Right.
For Muay Thai, you're asking for a lot of trouble. If you shoot in from too far away, and I start throwing knees, you immediately ask any wrestler who does MMA and they shoot. They're going to say, I have to be precise with my shot. Otherwise, I'm going to eat a knee for breakfast or dinner. You know what I mean? And that might be that. When I clinch, if I don't clinch and control the arms, the biceps, the shoulders, I'm going to eat an elbow. So there's a counter to everything. Again, I can't reiterate it enough. Muay Thai is the most complete striking martial art, in my opinion. Humble opinion.
Now, what about the Muay Thai kicks? I mean, the round kicks. How applicable do you think those are for the street for somebody who isn't a Muay Thai fighter or a Muay Thai expert?
You get kicked, and and again, one of the main things that separate guys who train or fighters from the everyday street fighter is the conditioning. So you get kicked in the body, depending on who kicks you. That's like getting hit with a bat. Mm-hmm. All right. You take that to the ribs. One good roundhouse kick, if you will, to the ribs can fracture a rib. One good knee to the ribs, you can fracture the ribs. I think that the most significant strike in modern history is the leg kick. I think in the 80s, I want to say, America had not been completely introduced to Muay Thai. I have a really bad memory, so you got to kind of work with me. But I know it, but I might not remember everybody's name precisely. But one of these guys, he's a coach. I think he's Sean Pettis' coach. I said Sean Pettis. What's the guy's name? Showtime Pettis, whatever his first name is. Anthony Pettis. They're brothers, if I'm not mistaken. There were two brothers. The guy has an older brother. And they were kickboxing champions in America, very well known. And they ended up fighting a guy from Thailand. They brought the guy because, in your mind, you almost want to make kickboxing and Muay Thai synonymous, but they're different. And the American guy was the brother of this coach for whatever reason. I could always just hurry up and look it up, but I'm not going to do that. He was outstriking this guy with a lot of boxing, a lot of hands. Once the leg kicks got introduced in the bout, it completely changed the complexion of the fight. The leg kick, to me, is just one of the most. I can't knock you out with a leg kick. You're not going to lose consciousness. However, 5 well-placed kicks, sometimes 2 on an unconditioned leg, changes the complexion. You might even have to stand differently. Yeah. Okay. And that's if you can continue. If you have, the mental strength or, testicular fortitude, as they will, depending on who you are, to continue. You know what I mean? Because who wants to say my leg hurts and they want to stop fighting? Nobody wants to do that. But imagine your adrenaline is pumping, your heart is going, your blood is racing, but now you're feeling a searing pain in your leg. It's impacting the way you make common steps. That is the leg kick. Again, I cannot knock you out, but I can severely damage you. There's fights where you see the guy's leg, his thigh, double the size of it normally. The thigh is like one of the biggest muscles in your body, if not the biggest. But again, I'm not an anatomy expert. I know it's a big muscle on your body, and it's swollen double the size from another person kicking you. The leg kick changed. I think it changed the history or the complexion of combat sports, modern hand-to-hand combat without weapons under a rule set.
So, Charles, we got a lot of guys out there that like to trash talks combat sports, MMA, all of that. And they say, well, it's no match for the double eye gouge, or, I'll poke them in the throat or whatever. What would you say to guys like that? And I'm not asking to get directly controversial, but I am saying, like, you're a very accomplished mixed martial artist. Do you think that if you went against a guy who had the double eye gouge and wanted to punch you in the throat and kick you in the balls, I have the feeling he wouldn't fare so well?
Okay. And again, so I wouldn't call myself an accomplished mixed martial artist. What I would say is this. I train so that the guy who wants to eye gouge me or give me the fish hook can't do that to me easily. But I used to joke around and say that my starting combination is the ball kick, the eye gouge, and I end off the combination with the fish hook, right? But so I'll give you a quick story. Now, listen, I'm from Jersey City, New Jersey, born and raised. So street fighting is one of my things. So, I came up doing that. I train because I like it. I'm not one of those guys, and I discourage any of the viewers. If you train, don't train so you can fight someone in the street. It can get you in a lot of trouble. Believe it or not, it can get you injured, because if you're in a real street fight with a person that's not civil, that person might not stop there. He might be like, oh, because there's some people who are trained or taught, if I can't beat you, what's the movie? One of my favorite movies, Casino. So remember they're talking about Joe Pesci's character. He said, yeah, if you beat him with the hands, he's going to come with a bat. If you beat him with a bat, he's going to come with a knife. If you beat him with a knife, he's going to come with a gun. And if you beat him with a gun, you better kill him, because he's going to keep coming back. So for you people who are not familiar with that type of mentality, keep that in mind. Now, to directly answer your question, not directly, because I'm going to go and I'm going to go off on a quick tangent.
Please.
I remember doing a seminar with one of the Machado brothers. I want to tell you, it was Johnny Machado. And they were like, man, and I always ask bizarre questions. So I'm like, man, what if you're doing your jiu-jitsu, a similar question to it, and someone bites you? If you've never been bitten in a fight, it is one of the most painful, it doesn't matter where, one of the most painful things, and you have to make a quick decision right then and there, because usually you're bitten because you're holding someone or someone is holding you. Now, luckily, if you're holding the person, you can make a decision and relinquish your hold. But if the person is holding you and biting you, you would hope, the only thing you can really hope is that the person stops if you're being restrained. But in this case, he said, all right. He said, yeah, that's a good question. He said, I'll tell you what, I was in Rio and I was on the bus in Brazil. And I put the guy in a Madeleine, they call it rear naked choke here. He said, I had the guy, and the guy bit me, I guess on the arm. So, you kind of going around the neck. So the guy just kind of did one of these numbers, and bit him. So I was like, oh, he bit you. So I'm like, what did you do? I bit him back on the top of the head, and I finished my strangulation maneuver. So I train so that some random guy can't just stick his thumb in my eye. You know what I mean? I'm not the most athletic guy, but I have done this too long for some random guy to defeat me in physical combat with an eye gouge, because now I can do the same eye gouges, the same bites. I can do everything you can do, plus I got all this other stuff that I can do to you too.
That's exactly what I always try to tell guys that are into the RBC reality-based combative stuff. It's not bad, but it's not the answer in itself. Like, you really should be training consistently in something, whether it's BJJ, Muay Thai, both would be preferable. But if you have all of that, plus you know how to kick someone in the nuts and gouge their eye, you're a devastating fighting machine at that point.
Indeed.
Yeah. So Krav Maga. Krav Maga is a big thing, and there's a big debate. There's a big back and forth between Krav guys and MMA guys, and I'm sure you've heard I know you have, in fact. Again, without getting too controversial, I don't want to stick you in a hornet's nest or anything, but any kind of advice for guys that may be thinking, well, I go into the Krav studio, I punch the mitts or whatever, but I'm not fighting at all. Like, what would you say to somebody like that really wants to learn how to fight?
Well, anything that you do, you have to practice under the conditions of which you're going to do, because of what you're going to do at that time. So even if I'm studying for the SATs, when I'm taking my practice exam, it should be timed. I should be in a quiet area to do my best to simulate the conditions of when I do it for real. Now, I don't know if you're asking me if the guy's trying to say one is better than the other. Is that what you're asking me?
No, I'm basically putting it to, like, do you need to actually spar consistently to actually get better at fighting? Or is it possible to get better just by pad work?
That's kind of a loaded question. The reason why is, all right, for striking, you cannot get better by only sparring. You actually get better by doing pad work. The reason why is repetition is one of the greatest teachers, if not the greatest teacher outside of experience, right? But you don't want to learn by getting into a whole bunch of street fights while trying to perfect your craft. That usually is probably not going to work out for you. However, you need to also, again, practice under the real conditions to see what works and what doesn't work. Again, like I said before, a lot of the established martial arts that you have today, they were established because they said, let's see what happens, either in a wartime situation where your life was on the line, or in watching two people go and say, oh, you know what? This is what immediately happens. We need to create a scenario for that. That's what actually makes Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu probably one of the best, if not the best, singular martial art in the world, is because you can literally do it every single day at 100% and then do it again the next day with a very low potential or percentage for injury. Mm-hmm. All the other martial art, I can't kick you full blown, even if you had headgear. I can't kick you full blown in the head several times a day and expect for you to come back tomorrow, even next year, right? Because I might have concussed you at that point. Mm-hmm. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you can do it. And that's why guys are so good, because they're pretty much almost in a real pressure situation and they have to execute the moves.
What do you think about Dutch sparring and flow rolling?
I like them both, but they both call for something specific. So flow, like, okay, the Dutch sparring is probably the closest to getting like into like that strong position and still trying to see what's going to happen for real. The whole idea about sparring, right, is, do you want to, one, training partners are not easy to come by, right? So if I say go hard or go home or something like that, all right, you might not have that partner tomorrow or next week. So you want to preserve yourself so you can do it again, and your sparring partner. Now, it's everything, there's levels, and I think and part of it is maturity, right? So one of the biggest teachers for maturity is there's a time and place for everything. When one person has knowledge of themselves and they can understand perspectives and know when that is applicable, you will be a better self, a better martial artist, and a better person, a better self. Now, flow rolling, you can't do flow rolling and expect to get good. So, but it's good for a warm up. It's good if I want to do the repetitions a little faster. So if you take like so for Muay Thai, right? When you go to Thailand, you'll see them kind of drilling, or I want to call it drilling, but kind of a light pace spar. Why? Because they fight a little bit more often, and you're trying to execute the moves. Now, I'm not going to love tap you. I'm going to put a little pressure behind it. But again, if I kick you in the head, we might not see you for another 2 or 3 weeks, right? Your brain can only take so much of that. So there has to be within degrees. But if you flow roll or flow spar, don't expect to do it for real and expect great results. You don't want your first time getting hit really hard to be when something is on the line, whether it's your life because you ended up fighting outside, or you signed up for a sanctioned bout and then you just face a killer who he has intentions of damaging you, and then that's the first time you get hit. You don't want that either.
Yeah. It's got to be a whole nother level once you actually get in the cage with that second trained opponent who has spent as much time as you training to literally knock you out. Now, Charles, I've seen you a couple times, and you cut down like massively to get in the cage. Did you ever end up doing that?
I never got my opponents would vanish off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
I had one guy, I don't know what happened to him, but I had one guy who I suspect found out who he signed the bout for, and he made himself unavailable.
Yeah, it seems like every single time you came in and you were like just like a week out from your fight, like I'd see you and I'd say, Charles, like I don't know where the guy went. Like,
yeah, like you'll never hear that I pulled out of a fight ever.
Yeah.
And part of it too, so some people, you see this handsome young face. I'm a little bit older for fighting. I'm 38. So, I understand, but without sounding like a barbarian, I've been in a lot of physical altercations in my lifetime. I consider myself a decent person. The older I get, I try not to, and I try to use my intellect. I really subscribe to the notion that the wisest man is the one who wins the fight without fighting.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a whole lot of that, and I've done a whole lot of winning, and not too much losing, but I've lost, some fights, but I understand it. But I understand the mentality of competition more than anything else. So if anybody has trained with me, you would think I probably had like 50 fights.
Yeah.
But I haven't had any sanctioned bouts.
This actually ties me in perfectly to a question I had written down here for you. What do you think some important traits of a warrior are?
Of a warrior?
Just in general, a warrior.
The first one is wisdom. The second one is mercy. The third one is heart. The third one is you need to have the most of it. It's not the first one in level of priority, but that one has to be the most potent. You have to have heart. All right? So, again, wisdom, mercy, heart, and those are the aspects that you need. And then and if you're talking about physical aspects, then obviously you have to be strong. So what we used to do when I was younger, you needed to have the 3 S's and an H. So you needed speed, skill, strength, and heart never leaves. Because I have seen formidable people cower in the face of adversity. And you would think, that's a guy that you're like, man, that guy's dangerous. He had the speed, he had the skill, he had the strength. Some people would put stamina in there too, but I figure if you have all of those, you would work on the stamina as well. But the 3 S's were the main ones. That's what you need physically. Spiritually, I'm a spiritual person. Yeah, it's what I said before. You need wisdom, mercy, and the most potent one is heart. But the first one, you need wisdom. You have to have the ability to decipher when is the correct time to go to battle.
That's really key. And a lot of guys out there, they just don't think of it. they want to fight, right? They want to get that fight, whether it's in the ring, out of the ring, on the battlefield. Got a lot of guys out there that are just hopped up. They've been training. They want to get that fight, but there's a time to fight and there's a time not to fight. So
100%.
that's wise of you to say so. Now, mercy. Why mercy?
Because you have to know. Well, first of all, if you're a true warrior, you don't pick on anyone. However, there's some people who are fighting for a reason. So this person might be fighting out of self-preservation. Some people are fighting for more selfish reasons. But you have to have mercy and know when to need it and not need it and execute it. And when, again, there's a time and place for everything. So I might have to destroy you and destroy you completely. Not because I hate you, because if I allow you to come back, you are going to pose a threat to everything that I hold dear. So I must destroy you completely, wipe you off the face of the planet. There's others where, listen, I have to defeat you to let you know that you can be defeated, and that's all the lesson that you need, and the people that will come after you they'll know. So you have to know that, because with mercy comes respect. And respect, when you respect your opponent, say, you know what, I see what's going on here, I'm going to go elsewhere, because it's still a toll on you, or if you're a group, an army or anything like that, it's still a toll on you. So you have to say, hey, am I going to commit more energy to fighting you, or did I subdue you enough that I can let you go? I was in a position where I had a guy steal from me. And, I confronted him. We got into a physical altercation. I put him in an inferior position. And he said to me, hey, man, basically he was saying I stole from you because I was hungry. Why would I cause more injury to another human being? That doesn't even make sense. That doesn't make me a better person. I get nothing for it. He didn't try to kill me. He didn't try to harm me. Nothing. He got caught in the act of stealing. Whether he was lying or not, that right there was enough for me to know, hey, let him go. He learned his lesson.
So that right there really kind of shows me the kind of man that you are. And it really actually reminds me of a lot about guerrilla warfare. And you're talking about having the wisdom to understand, when do we need to annihilate this force? When do we need to spend our energy to go ahead and take this force out and have no mercy on them? Because we can't. But then when do we back off and tactically retreat in order to, strike another target, come back fighting another day? Which ties into heart. You have to have heart. You have to have heart to get back up and keep going. How important is it in cage fighting, but also, I guess, on the street, to get back up after you've been knocked down?
And that's why I said it has to be the most potent, because I've seen individuals who are really just a shell. They possess all the physical attributes, and so people go heart, right? But really, this is heart. The heart and the mind are kind of the same thing, right? Because this just pumps blood. That's all it does, right? But this is heart, but we're talking about it from a different perspective. Heart and fear are two sides of the same coin. Okay? So at a certain point, it's literally a decision that you have to make. I want something. I want to go in there and go get it. Are you going to let fear take you? Because fear can stop you from making the next step. Even if you're fighting on an amateur level, just to do it for the sake of doing it. That walk to the cage is unlike any other walk. When they close the cage doors, no one is coming to help you physically, right? You have to make the decisions yourself. You hope that everything you've trained, you're going to be able to employ it once the cage doors open. In real life, I've seen guys train, just said jiu-jitsu, because jiu-jitsu, you're not really hitting anybody, I've seen guys train and call themselves good, get confronted by another man and cower. And I look in amazement, because I'm like, you train martial arts for this very reason. You are useless to me. Like, why are you here? Because you have to think about it like this. under no circumstances, from the level of the highest level, country to country, to the lowest level, person to person, is no one allowed to take anything from you against your will. It doesn't fly. You have sovereignty over yourself. Why? Because you've earned whatever it is you have. Maybe you work hard for it. You should not allow another person to forcefully take it from you. You must put yourself in a position to protect what's yours and be able to protect someone else who's next to you. Otherwise, and it's not because it's not a bravado thing, it's a pride thing. It's a self-preservation thing. Because the next time I run into you, I might decide, I want something else. Let me take it from you. You can't live life that way. It doesn't work. So you have to have the heart to just do the bare minimum, which is to protect yourself. To get in the cage, that is such a demanding ask of a person. Mentally, you have to prepare yourself. Physically, you have to be prepared yourself. Sometimes the margin of victory is this small. It's just you willing to take that step that the other person was not. But if you are fearful of something, whatever it might be, some people are fearful of winning. As crazy that sounds, there is a fear of that. You have to overcome those things in order to be successful. And that doesn't just apply to fighting. It applies to everything. Everybody who I've trained to compete will tell you, or should be able to tell you, that when I train them, I just don't train you for your bout. I just don't train you to fight. I train you to be a better you. You're going to be able to take all these tools. They're going to be applicable to all that you do. Some people, you might be in media, but you might be scared to approach someone that you want to interview. You're like, oh my God, that's Mike Tyson. And he could be just relaxing. No, I'm not going to ask him for an interview. And you probably missed a bombshell of an interview.
That's a good example. That's a really good example, actually. So you talk about the guys who are kind of a shell, right? And I'm going to bring this to a physical standpoint right now. Like, everyone's afraid, or I don't know about these days, but everyone used to be afraid of like a bodybuilder, right? Strong, freaking built like a refrigerator. But a lot of the times those guys like have zero cardio. They can't actually fight unless you have the heart to go ahead and say, like, that guy stole something from me. I'm going to knock him out. You'll never know, right? Like,
because they're intimidating, right?
Right.
But one man or woman should not be afraid of another man or woman. It shouldn't happen. Now, it doesn't mean that fear is not in you, but whatever else is, the other stuff that's in you is greater than that fear that's in you. You just have to know that. Some people need to learn it, but some people, it's just innate in them. Some people allow the other forces within them, like anger. And like another thing, that people who train with me, you'll never see me like flurried or very angry. I keep the same even-keeled face. I can be in danger. You'll never know what I'm thinking. And that's one, because I'm calm. I know that I've done so much preparation for this position. What could you possibly do to me? And you go. Doesn't mean that I can't lose, but I'm going to keep going. You're going to have to take the victory from me.
So this is something that really fascinates me. I've noticed, especially when I was a white belt, I would go against guys like you and other guys, higher belts, purples, browns, and it was an easier role, to be honest, because you guys aren't trying to like hurt us. Whereas if a white belt goes against another white belt, it's an all-out brawl and like there's just flailing all over the place. When it comes to, you as a brown belt rolling against, say, a white or even a blue belt, two-stripe blue belt, what is going through your mind? Is it more like, I really want to kind of back off and let this guy work his stuff? Or is there also a point in time where you say, okay, like, I'm going to be nice, but let me get him too?
Okay. It really, the scenarios always change, because it could also be you. Like, how do you feel that day? You might have had a hard week. It might be Friday and you've been training since Sunday. You haven't gotten to your day off yet. So it might be like, all right, but there's always, I can't allow you to just dominate me in any position. So you have to, number one, I think you should always try your hardest. Two, yeah, you should acknowledge the experience level. And I say that word interchangeably with belts. I don't like to say belt or belt color. I like to say experience level. I should acknowledge your experience level. But that kind of doesn't matter to me, because you can be a white belt. Matter of fact, if you ask this guy sitting behind me, I think he's a blue belt with like 1 or 2 stripes or something, right? But anybody who's rolled with them, they don't feel like that, right? So I don't care about those things. It's a matter for me is let me do the best that I can. Now, obviously, if I'm rolling with someone who's not the same experience level with me, I'm not going to be doing all my moves now, but I'm a different person to ask. So when you see me, I'm usually the biggest person in the room or one of the bigger people. So I'm usually going to be matched up with someone not as big or not as strong. And now it's let me improve the other aspects of my game that. So, all right. So let me say this. Let me say it this way. Because if you're truly a martial artist, let's say we're doing pick one, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling, whatever. I might be, let's say, black belt level, but there are going to be aspects to my game that might be at a blue belt level. So how about I work on the stuff that we're at the same experience level in those positions? So yeah, in your totality, maybe the guy that I am matched up against, he might be at a lower experience level. So I'm going to find a position where I'm kind of close, and I'm going to work on that. That should be really the mentality that I think a lot of people would progress faster and be more proficient if they did those things. But you got to remember, let me try to be nice. Some of the people that train martial arts are doing it because mentally they are in inferior positions. Their pride, their self-esteem is not high. So they get a mental charge from dominating another person. I have always been a very confident person, so it doesn't really make that much of a difference to me if I dominate someone in a practice setting. Because what I just said to you a little while ago, I've seen someone formidable in jiu-jitsu cower in the face of adversity. Not even like they were getting prepared for a cage match or a jiu-jitsu match. They were confronted physically, and even their body language gave off complete fear. They gave up before they even tried to defend themselves. They were willing to accept someone either abusing them or dominating them rather than self-preservation. I don't agree with that. So if you practice those things and you find confidence, you will be better as a martial artist. You don't have to destroy the person. I hope that answered your question without me.
No, it absolutely does. And, it's funny you bring, that aspect up, because my next question was the Warriors Code. And, there's songs about it and all of that, some really good ones at that. But is there kind of like an actual Warriors Code, an unspoken ethical code that guys like you and I and the guy behind you try to live by?
Yes and no. The problem is that if there's ever an unspoken code, right? So think about what the key words you're saying, unspoken and code, right? A code has to be deciphered and interpreted. Once we say that, right, interpretation, your interpretation and my interpretation can be different. And now that, because it's unspoken, what does that mean? We're on a different page. So yeah, there's one, because there's some things that are universally recognized, but those things that are universally recognized are probably not unspoken. You probably know them already.
Right.
So I try, anybody who's around me consistently, they know that I move at a different pace or at a different drum. And there's certain things I'm not going to accept, or, I stand up for certain things. I stand on them, and that's what I'm going to be. So yes and no, because there's some universal rules. Most jiu-jitsu gyms you come, you enter into, you'll see check your ego at the door, and a lot of those places, things like that. That doesn't mean that people are going to adhere to them,
right.
But there is one. Because there's certain things that we know we're not going to do, but there's certain things that people either ignore or they have a different interpretation of what that might mean.
And you bring that up a couple of times, and I'm glad that you did. As far as the guys who come in, we've all seen it. Guys who come in just to beat up other people. It doesn't matter how good or bad they are. They just want to dominate them and feel good about themselves. What's, in your opinion, what is kind of the best way to deal with guys like that?
You're asking the wrong person. The reason why is because I was trained a certain way, and I only know how to deal with aggression with aggression.
Yeah.
I don't believe that you should deal with aggression with passiveness.
Yeah.
That doesn't check aggression. I don't have to be more aggressive than you. I just have to let you, once I win, once you consider in your mind that there's an easier target or there's a better victim. So that's the only way. I have to let this person know I'm going to fight back. I might still be dominated, but that person will be like, whoa, that's where the heart comes in, right? You know what? I'm not going to do what I did to that guy the last time. The last time that happened, that didn't work out as smoothly as I liked it. So that's the only way. There are other ways. I just don't agree with those ways. I'm not even going to talk about them. So if you attempt to bully me, something is going to happen. I'm not going to go quietly in the wind, as they say.
So an eye for an eye really is kind of a good way to deal with things.
No, because I don't want to teach that to a kid, right? But I also have to teach anybody, right? Most of your rules, if not all of them, everyone should be able to employ them.
Okay.
You don't want to say an eye for an eye because depending on who you meet, that might be a never-ending loop. That's
right.
Not what we want. The point of me preparing myself is to check you so that you don't do it again to me. But and that's where the mercy comes in. You see that? Okay, let me leave this person alone. If one person can understand that concept, you will have less concepts. Why? Because it takes two of us to go. If one person decides that they don't want to, 80% of those confrontations dissipate right away. So I wouldn't say an eye for an eye. And in some cases, it's necessary. But in other cases, yeah, it depends on what's happening. So look, this is the way I look at it. Real simple. You can say whatever you want to say to me. There shouldn't be too much that you can say to me outside of an imminent threat that we have to have a physical altercation. Say to me.
Right.
But once you infringe upon my space, meaning my personal self, or you take something from me, then at that point I need to act. You can't say, hey, call someone. Whoever you're going to call, right? Think about this concept. They respond to the act. They do not stop the act. The responsibility is for you to do what you can to stop the act from happening. So an eye for an eye, no, because I don't want this to be a never-ending loop. However, for me, the best results I had was meet aggression with aggression. But it also depends on who's saying it. If I'm a psychopath, I can't say meet aggression with aggression. I might escalate the level way beyond its parameters that are necessary. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. And, I'm glad you put that in there at the end is if I'm a psychopath, like you may not necessarily want to go eye for eye because it'll never end. And that psychopath will always escalate it further until whatever. And that's a bad thing. But something I hear you keep saying is like, for me, I need to check him. For me, I need to do this to protect myself. And it shows me that, you really put a big emphasis on each man or woman looking out for themselves. And you said it yourself. You can't expect anybody to come and save you. This is why we need to train. And this is why everybody out there, in my belief, needs to have some basic level of understanding of self-preservation. It's on us.
Indeed.
Yes. I want to circle back around real quick before we cut out here. Training fighters, man, this is something that fascinates me. And you've been training really solid fighters for a while, and I see their progression firsthand. What is it like to train fighters that are actually stepping into the cage and competing at high levels? Like, it's got to take a psychological toll on you as well to give that energy to them and give what you have to them.
Yeah, it 100% does, because I immerse myself into anything that I intend to be successful at. Now, the first thing, though, if you're training someone, especially at those levels, and this is why not everyone can do it, because there's a phrase that I heard, and it's not widely used, but inclusion is a hell of a drug.
Hmm.
So you'll find people that train, they're like, oh, I don't want any appreciation. I don't want any thanks. But they're the first people to get ready to take a picture, or you don't see them take a background move. You can ask anybody that I've been around, when the large group comes and the fighter is successful and everybody's there, you'll probably find me in a corner somewhere minding my business. That's not, you have to know how to, so here's a phrase I hope no one steals from me. The first step every good trainer takes is backwards. Get out of the way. You're preparing your fighter to be great. That's what you're doing. So once you understand that, if you can swallow that pill, you're on your way to becoming a good trainer, a good instructor. You have to be able to step back and let that person do what you trusted them and what they trusted you to give them. If you cannot do that, then you're not going to be able to immerse yourself, because you're giving time into something that is not for you necessarily, because the fighter, the competitor is going to get all the attention, as they should. They are doing the most dangerous work. Even though your role is probably the biggest foundation, the dangerous work is being done by them. And that's in anything that involves competition. They're the people that are mentally taking on the stress. Once they get in, at least I do. I have sleepless nights because I'm thinking about, the next game plan. What mistake did I make that caused the fighter not to do well? So a lot of time, if you're good and you believe in yourself, a lot of free time until you get like fully established. And even then, you have to be willing to give a lot of free time. You have to be willing to put the fighter first. That's a lot, because we're talking about real life. Again, I'm 38, but I'm in a position where I don't have children. So I don't have to be home with my kids, and you know what I mean? When I could have been spending that. There are times, there are fighters that'll tell you, we have an hour session, we might be there for 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look where I am now. I'm in a hotel, getting ready to do some work. Fighters with me. We're going to be doing work, and they trust me to do that. If you're not willing to do those things, step out. Let somebody else do it. Because you're going to ask that guy to do some things that you're not going to do. You're not getting in that cage. You're going to ask that guy to put his body in harm's way, and you're not willing to spend free extra hours with that guy? No.
Yeah, I think you put that very well, is that you have to be able to step into the background, because it's not about you. It's about the fighter. But I imagine that also can be kind of tough because, as the coach, you want that recognition too. It's only human. And, you deserve that recognition too. It's not just about your wants. It's like you're spending every single waking hour of, your free time. You're losing sleep over this. Like, you deserve the recognition too, but to be able to have the ability to step back and say, it's not my time in the spotlight. That's what I really think is kind of a unique trait.
Yeah, I agree. I agree for the most part, but you shouldn't be looking for recognition. I've trained fighters. I've seen people take concepts that I give and take it and never mention my name. I've seen people that I've helped never mention my name, but so, you know what I mean? Let those people be great. If you're doing a good enough job, or if you're doing a good job, eventually your name will ring bells. Somebody is going to seek you out and say, "Hey, man, I see what you're doing. Can you work with me? Can you help me?" That's what it's about. You have to keep in mind, if you're a trainer, that can be a thankless position to be in. And if you're not willing to accept that, just step out of the way. Like, if you want that attention, you go get a trainer and you go fight.
Yeah. Yeah, that's well said, man. If you want that attention, you should be the fighter. You should be the one stepping into the cage. And the fact that you're able to sit there and say, like, hey, I'm not the one putting myself in harm's way, again, it shows wisdom, and it shows what kind of guy you are, man. It's been a privilege to sit down and talk with you, man. I know that we're friendly back and forth at the gym, but I don't think we've ever really had a serious in-depth discussion as far as, all of this crazy stuff that we always kind of think about. So, Charles, I thank you for coming on, man. How can guys get in touch with you?
You can Catch me on Instagram at Black Starfighter, one word, everything spelled the way it's spelled in the English dictionary. Black Starfighter on Instagram. You can DM me, follow me. You can catch me at AMA once, things die down. I'll be at AMA, teaching classes. I will be on any random New Jersey block. You know what I mean? You can catch me anywhere there. But probably the best way to reach out to me, if you don't know me personally, is to reach out to me on Instagram at Black Starfighter. All one word. One word spelled the way it is in the English language.
Awesome. And for you guys out there who want to ask Charles more questions just about, whatever it is, street fighting to, if your department, agency, whatever wants, whatever Muay Thai, anything like that, hit him up. I highly recommend Charles. And it's not just because I know him from the gym. It's because I know what kind of man he is and I know what kind of trainer he is. He gets results. So, again, Charles.
Thank you.
No,
I'm very appreciative and gracious. The honor and the pleasure was mine. I appreciate you giving me your time.
Privilege is all mine, dude, for real.
Thanks.
Guys, until next time, please remember that you are your first and last line of defense, and I will see you on the next Tactical Podcast. Cheers, mother flowers.